It is week 28 on the Appalachian Trail, and we are somewhat hoping that this is our last week on trail and that the trail will not throw us any other unexpected surprises. But you never know on the AT. Our first view we've gotten of Katahdin. Getting closer. We had just gotten back in the 100-mile wilderness a day or so ago, and I have to say that at least for the first day, the weather was treating us a lot better than it had before. So, in the 100-mile wilderness, where we won't put bridges over unsafe river crossings, that's a thing, but there's a metal staircase here, and that's wilderness appropriate to climb up a hill. I just make it make sense, please. We had been told time and time again that the reason that there were no bridges in the 100-mile wilderness was so that it would maintain its wildernessy status. So that it was very ironic for us to find this metal staircase, and I was just really curious why that was allowed to be there, but bridges that help with safety weren't. But anyways, we're going to take a moment and enjoy this little mountain view and just enjoy that we're being on the trail. And now that we were no longer plagued with rain and fog and I could actually see the stunning views from the 100-mile wilderness, it made being in this spot so much more special, especially when we caught views of Katahdin. Although I didn't love the fact that we had to get off trail for a few days, there were some really nice bright sides to having to get off the trail, besides just enjoying the trail for a little bit longer. But because we stayed back, we actually ended up allowing some other friends that were behind us to catch up with us, and that meant that we would have the opportunity to summit Katahdin with them. And that was really special, that we would get to finish the trail with some of the people that had been some of our closest friends that we made on the trail. It was really cool and special to watch how the trail brought people back together. This is the trail today. I'm perched on a rock. That thing that looks like a waterfall? That's the trail. Same with this river. Our lovely stint of nice weather didn't last long, and we ended up with more torrential rain, which turned the trail itself into a river. We made it to the last shelter of the 100-mile wilderness. Fuck yeah. Reaching the last shelter was bittersweet for a lot of reasons, but it really made me cry when we read the shelter log and saw that our friends, the BFs, had left us notes. We just hit the southbound, or the furthest point of the northern section of the 100-mile wilderness. Abol Bridge. Here we come. Katahdin is in like 15 miles. It's bittersweet. Yeah, I have a lot to say, but it's also starting to sprinkle again. So I'm gonna put my phone away for now. But the end is near, and that's pretty sad. But it might be the end. But I'm trying to also think of it as a new beginning. It was so surreal to finally be walking across Abol Bridge, a point that we had been hearing about for a long, long time now. So to actually be here, to be walking across it, to be so close to entering Baxter State Park, it was like hard to believe. And after everything we'd been through in the last week to get to this point, it felt even more special to be here. To be signing the register to stay in the last shelter, to be walking towards Katahdin Stream, and to be enjoying this beautiful sunrise on the Appalachian Trail surrounded by friends. This was our second to last sunrise on the Appalachian Trail, and it definitely did not disappoint. After making sure we were all registered for the shelter and ready to go, we began our walk toward the Katahdin Stream campground, and since we only had about 10 miles to do that day, we really just savored the trail and took our time like we hadn't in a while. In those clouds somewhere is Mount Katahdin.
Did my yeehaw make your video?
Yeah, I did.
Are you happy about that?
It's our second to last day on trail. Oh, it's so exciting. And, I mean, it's sad. It's sad this adventure's ending. But the sun is supposed to shine today. We got some semi views of Katahdin, and we're gonna be finishing with friends. So yeah, tomorrow's the last day. We're gonna enjoy this 10 miles into Katahdin stream. Most of the day went really smooth and flowy, and it was a really enjoyable second to last day on trail. But as Barbie just reminded me, there were some tough moments this day because there were some really high water crossings that we had to navigate again. And once again, due to high waters, we had to take a little tiny Blue Blaze reroute to avoid some very high water. I have to say, I was getting tired of really high water, so where I couldn't continuously follow white blazes. But then we reached one of my favorite parts of Maine and one of my favorite parts of the day, Dacey Pond, which had a little tiny library, cabins, and you could see the view of Katahdin from the dock. The weather was picture perfect, and this view was absolutely picturesque. It looked like something out of a postcard come to life, and actually I'm sure it is on postcards. But this was one of my favorite views. It's still, to this day, one of my favorite moments on trail, and I added it to my list of places that I really hope to go back to one day and revisit. When we were here, we did run into a fun group of people who ended up giving us those cookies that we were eating, and it was really cool to tell them about our journey. Because we only had 10 miles to do that day, we really took our time at Dacey Pond, but then we figured that it was time to head to the shelter. We actually ended up giving up our spots at the Katahdin Stream shelter because I had reserved us a lean-to at the Katahdin Stream campground because I had been worried about getting a spot at the Katahdin Stream shelter. So anyways, we gave our spots to some other hikers who needed it. The lean-to was really nice, but for whatever reason, it was the most critter active lean-to that we'd been in. We saw this little mouse rat guy, and then we saw some chipmunks, and while they were absolutely adorable, it was wild that we hadn't seen this many until then. And of course, we did get a little bit of rain that night.
Mousie's back. Hopper. Squishy, come here, Squishy.
Thru hikers are weird.
Yeah, but in future, he's gonna be squishy.
Come here. Barbie, you kill this mouse, I kill you. He's gonna be my pack familiar. Come here, buddy.
Your pack what, familiar?
Yeah, my pack familiar.
And here's our little chipmunk friend. Again, maybe we were just not paying attention at other shelters, but this was the most bold of little vermin creatures that we had seen at the shelters. And I will have to say that they are adorable, and they didn't get into our stuff, so we didn't mind them there. They were just looking for snacks, and yes, we did entertain ourselves by talking to them and making them talk. I guess that's what happens when you've been living in the woods for 6 months. And of course, Barbie had to question if this was a chipmunk and not a squirrel. We were really enjoying just critter watching, and our buddy the chipmunk looks like he found something, and he was having a good old time just chowing down on it. Rescue Ranger, That final night in the shelter, I didn't sleep very well. I think it was a mix of nerves and excitement. It's summit day! Last day on the AT. Slept like garbage. But slept like garbage, but you know what? It's the nerves and the excitement. So time to summit today and finish this adventure. 6 months, and even on the last day of the trail, Barbie still dressed too warmly to start out the hike and had to change only 5 minutes into walking. It was our last day. I couldn't believe it. And in some ways, although I knew that it was our final day of hiking, it felt just like any other day on the trail. We'd been hearing from friends and those who had finished before us that Katahdin had temperamental weather, but we were lucky enough that the weather was beautiful on the day that we were summiting, though it was pretty freaking windy. Though I was just grateful it wasn't raining. We climbed, and every little window of a view we got was absolutely spectacular, though it did tell us that once we got out of the alpine zone that it was going to be incredibly windy. But I'll take the wind if it meant views like this. As we climbed, I had to keep reminding myself that this was it, so that I needed to savor every view and every breath of wind that passed across my face. I think I could tell even in that moment that when I touched that sign, it wouldn't feel like it was over. hour. It wasn't going to hit me that I was done with this amazing trail right away. But let's not let me get too ahead of myself. The trail was not done with me yet, and we still had a challenging climb to go before I was anywhere near that sign. I didn't get as much video of the hunt trail as I would have liked, mainly because I needed my hands. But just take my word for it when I tell you that it was tough. And I just kept reminding myself that this was it. So there was no going back down. Obviously, I would have rolled down the mountain, but there was no going back down. I had to finish this thing. I was so close, and there was no turning back. But just know that I did belly walrus flop at one point to get myself up and over a rock that was super duper steep. Before I knew it, we were there, and I could see the sign, and tears were welling up in my eyes as I got to touch this iconic sign that I had been walking towards for 6+ months and dreaming of for so much longer than that. 2,000 miles and a lot of tears later. We fucking made it. I, of course, had packed out a treat for the top to celebrate reaching Katahdin. I was obsessed with these whoopie pies throughout New Hampshire and Maine, and how could treats not pack out a celebration whoopie pie flavored treat? It's still hard for me to put into words, even now, a year later, what it meant to me to touch this sign after dreaming of it for so long. I did it. I hiked the AT. Ugh, we're heading back down now, but these views. Are spectacular. How do you put into words the experience that meant everything? If you ask me if I would do it again, 1,000 times yes. Every drop of blood, sweat, and tears that I left on this trail was worth it to experience these views and the amazing people I met along the way. After summiting, we headed down the Abol trail and caught a hitch into Millinocket, where we met my mom and stayed at our final hostel. We showered, got clean, and tried to soak in the enormity of what we had just done. And then, with friends that we might never see again, but that we would never forget, we went and had a final meal as Thru hikers. 2,198.4 miles and 14 states. I was a Thru hiker.